Today I'm going to be talking about Harvest Hosts. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Crosby, and for the last 4 months I've been road tripping through the US in a travel trailer. I actually just finished up my road trip, so I'm now making some videos just to kind of help anyone who is planning an RV road trip or just a road trip in general. Today I'm going to be talking about Harvest Hosts, and if you've never heard of Harvest Hosts, this is the video for you, because I'm going to be talking about what it is, the pros and cons, and if it's worth the money. This video is not sponsored. I just really wanted to share my personal experience using Harvest Hosts because I've pretty much been using it the entire time that I've been in the RV throughout all the US. So Alabama, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. I've used Harvest Hosts in all of those states, and so I just wanted to talk about my experience with them and if I would recommend it to another fellow RVer. So really quickly, a summary of Harvest Hosts is it is a membership program for RVers, van lifers that gives you access to around 2,500 free campsites all over the US, but these are not just any campsites, they're actually really unique sites. So wineries, breweries, farms, museums, and you basically get to stay at these places for free. It is $100 for the year, depending on the plan that you get. $100 gets you access to most of the sites, and for the whole entire year, you get access to an unlimited number of these sites wherever you are in the US. The main requirements for being a member of Harvest Hosts is you do have to have a self-contained vehicle, ideally an RV, travel trailer, or van. You do need to be 100% self-contained because you can't rely on the host for electricity or water or bathrooms or anything like that. And then to book a spot at one of these Harvest Hosts, you just have to let them know about 24 hours in advance. Typically what I do is I go on the app, so they have a really nice user-friendly app, and you can go on there and you can check the different sites in the area, and some of them will have you request a stay through the app, others will have you call them and request to stay over the phone, so it just depends on the host, but you do typically need to let them know at least 24 hours in advance so they can let you know if they're available and if they have enough spots for you to come. So like I said, it is $99 for an annual membership at Harvest Hosts. The only thing is, you know, obviously these sites are free when you get there, but it is really nice and encouraged to support these hosts when you're there. So, you know, for example, if you're at a winery, maybe do a wine tasting. If you're at a brewery, grab a couple beers, just something to support the host, and it really just adds a fun twist to your experience. All right, so let's start off with the pros and cons of Harvest Hosts. So I'm gonna start off with the pros. So personally, the number one positive about Harvest Hosts was that it just adds a really unique dimension to your trip. I road tripped across the entire United States, and throughout that road trip, I was passing through tiny little towns that I've never heard of in my life that were supposedly in the middle of nowhere. But with Harvest Hosts, I would go on the app and you can actually put in your route. So for example, Florida to New Mexico, and along the route you can see what the closest Harvest Hosts are. So while I'm on my drive, I'm kind of searching for the different Harvest Hosts that I could potentially stay at, and when we were passing through Austin, Texas, typically what we would do in a city like that is boondock at a Cracker Barrel or a Walmart. Not very glamorous, but with Harvest Hosts, we actually found a really cool host site about 45 minutes outside of Austin in Elgin, Texas, which is a city I've never heard of. It's basically just a massive area of farmland, and so we saw this cool Harvest Host and we were like, let's just go for it, let's do it. So we drove there, and it ended up being one of the highlights of our entire trip in Texas. It was an olive grove called Dell's Favorite, and we met the owner. He gave us a behind the scenes tour of the grove, and we ended up getting a tasting of his olive oils and enjoyed the beautiful scenery, met a couple other RVers, got to hang out with the horses and the dogs, and it was just so much fun. And you know, I kind of compare that to what the experience would have been like staying at a Cracker Barrel or a random pull-off on the side of the road, and it was just, we got to go for free, and we bought, you know, $20 worth of olive oil and olive oil seasoning, and it was so good. So we got to enjoy delicious olive oil and a beautiful sunset on a farm instead of parking at a parking lot. So I would say that's the biggest pro for me, is just the unique dimension that it adds to a trip. And kind of going along with that, it really just exposes you to some hidden gems in the country. There's a lot of spots that we hit along the way on our road trip that probably would have never stopped at if it wasn't for Harvest Host. So for example, when we were passing through New Mexico, we ended up finding a Harvest Host at a volcano ice cave spot. Super cool, super unique. So I had it starred in my notes because like we have to go here, this looks sick. So we ended up going and ended up doing one of the coolest hikes that we had done on our entire trip. We got to hike to the volcano, look down at this massive crater in the earth, and then we hiked to the nearby ice cave and got to experience that. So it was just so cool, and I honestly don't know if I would have even known that that place existed if it wasn't for Harvest Host, because it kind of brought us there and showed me, you know, a spot on the map that I probably would have glossed over before. Another big pro of Harvest Host is that you get to support local businesses all along the way, which is really key for me. I really love when I'm traveling to kind of avoid going to chain restaurants or chain businesses and support those local community vendors that are all around the country. And I also just think it adds a fun level of authenticity when you're traveling around and helps you get to know that local community even better. So with Harvest Host, you get to live essentially on the property of these local businesses, support them, learn about them, and just get a really cool look into the local community. So that's the biggest thing, and I definitely recommend if you're staying at these Harvest Hosts to support them or at least shout them out on social media, leave them a review. And the last pro I wanted to add was just the fact that it is growing very rapidly. When we first joined Harvest Host, there was only around, I think, 1,800 locations, and now there's about 2,500. So, you know, this is a very rapidly growing platform and membership service. So I'm sure over the next few years, there's gonna be so many more locations opening up all around the US. So it's just gonna become a really cool, fun way to travel and a very accessible way to travel in the future. Okay, so now let's jump into the cons. I'd say one of the biggest cons is that you can only stay at a Harvest Host for 24 hours. That's just kind of a general rule of Harvest Host. You don't really want to overstay your welcome. I'd say it's a con just because there is a lot of picking up and moving around. And for someone like me who was road tripping through the US, that worked pretty well for me because I wasn't really staying in one place more than a few days anyways. But it is nice to kind of settle in one place for a few days. So if you're someone that really likes to kind of set up camp and relax, then, you know, just keep that in mind that it is only a 24-hour limit. However, I have had experiences where I've asked them, you know, can I possibly stay for an extra night? Or that's kind of something that they expect. So they'll ask me, how long do you plan on staying? So it just depends on the host. I would just, going into it, assume that you can only stay for one day. Another thing to note is that there are no hookups at these hosts. So it's really nice to have, you know, solar panels or batteries that are charging things in your van or your RV, as well as propane to power the fridge and running water in your tank, as well as a place to use the restroom. Like I mentioned before, there are some hosts that will let you stay more than 24 hours. There are also some hosts that have hookups for electricity or water. Typically it's like a small fee, like maybe $10, and I'd say a decent amount have that. I wouldn't bank on it. You can even ask them before, you know, do you have any hookups that we could purchase, and, you know, see what they say. I wouldn't say this is a con because personally I love boondocking and we had a generator and really didn't need it, but just wanted to note that for anyone that, you know, really needs power or water or anything like that. And then the other main con to Harvest Host is that it really can only accommodate RVers and self-contained vans. So here are all of the different vehicles that are not allowed to use Harvest Host, so that's just a limitation. And then one more thing to note is that not all Harvest Hosts can accommodate massive rigs. I'd say about 80% can accommodate gigantic rigs, so it's typically not that big of an issue, but it just is something to note. You know, when you look in the app, a lot of the times they'll have a little section that says, you know, important notes or something like that, and you can look in and see if they have a rig limit size. Now, for the burning question of all, is it worth the money? For me personally, it's an easy yes. They're $99 a year, and you get access to 2,500 spots unlimited throughout the US at these incredible locations. it's an easy yes for me. Obviously, you are spending more than $99 total because when you go to these places, you know, you're spending 20 bucks or so on wine or, you know, souvenirs that they've created. And honestly, I viewed that 20, 30 bucks at Harvest Host as a cost of entertainment because it really was so cool and I never felt obligated. I genuinely wanted to buy their product. So I definitely recommend it. At the end of the day, you're supporting a local business rather than spending 50 bucks on an overpriced campground with hookups. So I personally think it's very worth it. However, I will say if you are someone that hates boondocking and doesn't like to pick up and move around a lot, then you may want to rethink it. It's just really personal preference, but it really worked out for me. And I'd say if you are going on a road trip and trying to see a lot of different areas in a short amount of time, Harvest Host is perfect. So if you are thinking about getting a membership with Harvest Host, like I said, this video is not sponsored, I just love them. There is a link in the description box that will get you 15% off, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But I really hope you found this video helpful, and if you have any other questions about Harvest Host or have any follow-up videos you want me to create, I was thinking about possibly making one about my favorite Harvest Host that I stayed at in the US. So if you're interested in that, you know, give this video a like, and I will try and get that together for you guys. But yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have an amazing road trip if that's what you're doing. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!